Hello, it's Addie again. I'm doing something different and unique to me anyway. I'm actually doing a thorough review of a game I have played. So buckle up because this is going to be a little bit different. Here we go. One thing I want to say, the music that you will be hearing throughout this video is actually from the Hayseed Night. I will be using the main menu music as a backing track for this review. As a disclaimer, I'm only going to be reviewing Chapter 1 of the Hayseed Night for this video. As far as I know, this is the most up-to-date version as of February 25th, 2021. I'm going to try not to leave any stone unturned and give as thorough of a review as I possibly can. With that out of the way, let's do it. So, The Hayseed Night is a sort of rom-com mystery visual novel created by Maxi Molina, or @SandraMJDev on Twitter. This is their Twitter. This game came out on Steam in early December of 2020. There are 10 achievements in the game, at least the Steam version of it, which I personally really like in games. I tend to be a bit of a completionist, and I really enjoy getting like 100% achievements on the games that I play. It's noted on the Steam page that the game is actually still in development. There's one more chapter and one more epilogue to be released, and these are going to be free updates for those who already own the game on Steam. That is major appreciated, by the way. I get very frustrated when I have to pay for the same game over and over and over again. When you first launch the game, you have the option to choose your language, which is pretty neat. Though I will note that if you pick either French or Spanish, only the text is changed. The voice acting is actually still in English.
Holy horns! What's with this place? It's ancient. Are you sure we're allowed to be here?
And this is kind of nitpicky, but in the main menu, it doesn't actually change the text from English to anything else above the Twitter or Discord icons, but I don't really think it's that hard to figure out what that means. So yeah, it does mention, in the version I have at least, that the translations are only good until Chapter 3, in which case it will revert automatically to English, so that's something to keep in mind when you're playing the game. I'm hoping that in the future there will be at least some, if not all, things voice acted in those other languages. I think that's something really cool and gives opportunity to actors that don't speak English and still want to participate in games and voice acting and things of that nature. So hopefully, but we'll see. That is a lot to ask, and I'm aware of that. Let's take a step back, though, from the voice acting side of things before I go on way too long of a tangent, and let's talk about the visuals first. Firstly, I love the way the main menu is animated and clues you in visually to exactly the kind of environment you'll be experiencing when you're actually in the game. Admittedly, the animation is not the smoothest, but I personally believe that that was likely an aesthetic choice, and I'll touch more on that later on. Everything is legible in the menus, save for one hover in the options menu where the text goes from black to white or an off-white. I can't tell. With such a cream light colored background, I think anyone blinder than me would be unable to read it. But again, that's a nitpick because you can just take your mouse away and you'll be able to read it. Everything looks to have been customized heavily, and I personally really enjoy the muted reds and browns, so overall I think the menus look pleasant. Almost everything has a little bit of movement on hover, which is not my favorite. That's kind of a personal preference on my end, but at least it's eye-catching and you know what you're hovering over. Anyway, that's enough about the menus, so let's get into the game. So, the very first transition of the game is very cool and really eye-catching, that it's like almost an instant hook. It is propelled a lot by the sound and voice acting as well, to be fair, but I still liked it. It's not something I've seen in visual novels before that I've played, and granted I have not played a lot, but but I still think it's neat. The text box itself is completely customized, again, following the same sort of muted brown tones as the menu, but it's also nicely and subtly detailed to kind of bring it all together. So I like that. The background art in the game is relatively freeform throughout a lot of the game, but I don't think that makes it any less nice to look at. It usually isn't terribly messy. There were a couple of scenes that I remember being unable to tell what's really going on, and I don't know if that was intentional on the artist's part. And I'll show a couple of those here, but maybe my eye just doesn't catch what's trying to be conveyed here, so I don't really know, but to me it doesn't appear super intentional. It just feels like colors almost. But otherwise, I think it's typically done in a way to where the eye will understand relatively what it's seeing. And I can understand not wanting your backgrounds to bring a whole lot of attention to themselves, if that makes sense. Like, you wouldn't want to add high levels of detail to your backgrounds, especially if it might distract from the actual character art itself. There are a lot of different backgrounds and transitional scenes in this game, which I personally believe adds so much life and interest to what's going on. Although that's more of a mix of both background and character art, as well as animation in some areas. Again, the huge amount of backgrounds and transitional scenes is not something I have personally experienced in another visual novel, so anytime I get to see more art of the world and the characters, I get really excited because it helps me to stay engaged in the story being told to me, and it feels like the world is propelling forward, and I'm really there watching it unfold in front of me. So that I really like. Now, the character art. I adore these designs so much. There's honestly hardly anything negative I can say about them. Everyone has sort of like a distinct color and look and style about them, and there are all kinds of facial expressions. I could not count how many there are for each character, as well as body movements in the game. There's a lot of mobility happening through the story. Each character is instantly recognizable and really just fun to look at. I do want to note that some of the art does look kind of sketchy in some areas, which seems to come up more in transitional scenes and in this particular fight scene. The line art isn't particularly smooth, and it doesn't really have consistent line weights either across the board. There's a little bit of variation, but I personally don't mind those things, especially in art that tells a story like this. I like when the still images look like they have life and movement in the way that the artist actually went about creating them, and a bit of sketchiness and a sort of rough around the edges aesthetic definitely conveys that to me personally. When it comes to the animation of the characters, there's usually a frame or two in between one transition to another that makes the movement look smoother overall. But there are plenty of times where there's no extra sprite frame, which kinda threw me for a loop at first. It took me a while to get used to, where some parts of the characters looked more flowing and others a bit more staccato. But it wasn't enough of an issue for me to stop playing the game. I still very much enjoyed it. Throughout the game, the sprites move around the screen as if they're running or laughing. In some cases, they're punching each other. And that spark of energy to the game was something I absolutely loved. Once again, it's not really something I've seen in visual novels that I've played before, and the game feels a lot less like a book and far more action-packed, even though I'm still doing the same thing, which is reading. I do want to mention that when it comes to the art and animation, especially with that fight scene I mentioned before, I believe that the sketchy style is very much intentional. I do think it ties into the loose style of the backgrounds really well, so I think it makes it visually cohesive, in my opinion. Now, the sounds. I actually really enjoy the music. I found myself humming it later in the day after I played the game. It's catchy and it fits the theme. The sounds themselves can be a smidgen repetitive. I know that all aggressive or hostile contact seems to sort of be the same fleshy punch sound, but it's not really enough to be super annoying. I've just become aware I've heard some of the same sound effects before as I'm playing the game. But again, that's not enough to disrupt from the game since I'm usually so invested in what's going on. Now, my favorite part, the voice acting. First of all, what a dynamite team of actors in this game. The acting is so well done. Most of the time, it doesn't even feel like they're acting. Yeah, those actors just completely embodied their characters with every take. It's just brilliant.
You called?
We've been looking everywhere for you!
And so you found me. Congratulations. Now, if you don't mind...
Miss Rochelle's had us searching for hours! She wants you back immediately!
Divine beeswax, I'm crawling out of my skin here. Who the hell you laughing at now, huh? That weirdo ain't no joke, you hear me? Last time I talked to him, it only took me shoving my hoof in my mouth half a second to swish, get a blade on my neck. And all I could see out of this eye was the creepy face of one of those gold... No, yeah, of course you'd find it funny, Mistress Miss Tess. Paying my respect sure is a fancy way of saying he got the hots for you.
As far as I can tell, some actors took liberties with their lines, so the text doesn't actually quite line up with the words they're saying sometimes. But, yeah, that's not enough to bug me. I'm actually glad that the voice director allowed those actors to speak how they felt their characters naturally would. Good choice, and those actors were clearly made comfortable enough to shine. I want to give a quick shout out to Aina, who's a mute character in the game. For a character that doesn't speak at all, the laughter, the groaning, and the growling, just kind of sprinkled in there. One, gave her so much life, and two, so much style and sass and personality that it honestly made her my favorite character almost instantly. A quick overview of the gameplay. There isn't really much of it. It's a visual novel, so that's kind of to be expected, but the choices are few and far between. One thing I do absolutely adore is the encyclopedia in the game. I am a sucker for lore and delving into the world of the game, so the fact that there is an encyclopedia included at all just delights me to no end. There's plenty of places, special words, and sayings that are mentioned by the characters during their dialogue, so it's great to have a glossary to look at when you want to know what they're all meaning. Now, it is mentioned on the store page that so far the game is about 10 hours of content, which, in all honesty, I think it's a little bit generous. If you're a quick reader like I am, it's not going to be 10 hours. For context, it took me just about an hour to get through the first chapter. I do want to mention again, I am a quick reader, and I personally have not played the other chapters. So maybe they're much longer than the first one, I don't know. But keep that in mind when you get the game. One other thing though, that 10 hours may be referring to replay time, in which case I can see it being 10 hours of content if you go back and replay the chapters with different choices. Overall, my opinion of this game is that it's good. It's actually great for a visual novel. Is it worth 15 USD? Yeah. I think it will be when the game is entirely out. I definitely don't regret the purchase. I'm happy to have essentially bought all that art. I think the acting is brilliant, like I said. So yeah, I think it will be worth $15 when everything is out and ready to go. I have replayed the first chapter once over, and while the choices you make do take you down different routes of dialogue, I'm not actually sure how they affect the end game. I don't know if relationship points are a thing or actually matter. If your choices make you more skittish or brutish or, whatever kind of personality type you tend to choose. Or if you're just taking a different path of dialogue. There isn't much feeling of inevitability, though. Save for the fight scene I previously mentioned a couple times. That particular choice felt pretty linear. Otherwise, I think the point of the game isn't really to make the choices. I think it's more of the story that's being told to you. And my opinion is that the game has put me enough at ease for me to allow it to tell its tale. So again, overall, I would recommend the game, especially when it's definitely all out. I would recommend it for someone who specifically just likes to read a lot and likes art a lot. And definitely if you are really interested in voice acting and stuff like that, this is a great game to get because everyone just does really, really fun performances. But yeah, I think that this game is absolutely a labor of love. And I think that's what gives it so much value, makes it totally worth it. Thank you so much to Maxi for letting me play your game and reviewing it. I hope that you had a good time listening to my review. I know this is the first time I've ever done anything like this, so it may be a little strange, but yeah, we got through it. We did it together as a team. If you want to buy this game, I will leave a link to this Steam page down below. There's a demo also, so you do not have to pay cash for the game if you want to try the demo. You can just do that instead. Anyway, thanks for sticking around. I appreciate you being here, and I will see you later on. Bye.